It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey, folks, welcome back to the program. We got Congressman Bruce Westerman on the line. Bruce, how's it going, sir?
Good, Paul. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. Hey, how's that?
Starting to feel like fall in Arkansas a little bit.
It is. Yeah, I know. Yesterday I got up and I was like, the deer are moving today. I mean, they certainly are,
Yeah. Their neck will start swelling here before long.
Hey, just real quick, generally, how's the re-election campaign going?
Oh, it's going well. We're working hard and doing all the things we're supposed to do, getting ready to go up on TV and radio and send the mail out, and just trying to get the message out on the good things that have been happening in our country. A lot of people want to tell you there's not good things happening, but there's actually some really good stuff happening under this Republican Congress and President Trump.
I certainly would agree with that. There are some positive things happening. There is, I believe, we're in the middle of a cultural shift as well. I also think that there are independents and also Democrats, believe it or not, from what I'm hearing, where people are watching what's going on and they are seeing through what the media is telling them, and they realize that some of this stuff just isn't right, doesn't make any sense. And some of them are planning on voting Republican straight down the ticket because, the tactics of the left, the leftist tactics, are kind of, driving people away from the Democrat Party. Are you hearing that as well?
Yeah, I am. I'm having Democrats tell me that they're going to vote for Republicans this time, and it's not. It's more of the extreme liberal movement out there. The Bernie Sanders. I forget this girl's name in New York. That's kind of just come on the scene.
Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah. They're becoming the loudest voice on the left, and they're really, it's a socialist movement, and Bernie's, I guess, a self-declared socialist, and it's really more like the freedom and liberty that from the French Revolution, not the American Revolution. It's one with no responsibility and it's every man for himself kind of thing, and that's where some people are pushing our country, and it's dangerous. It gets away from the foundations of what America's built on, and I think most people will see through that.
We're talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman. Congressman, when you get reelected, what are your plans? What do you want to do for this next term?
Well, there's several things I want to work on. We've been working a lot on an immigration bill. I think we've got to get that issue settled, get the wall built, get security along the border taken care of, deal with the visa lottery program and the chain migration, the DACA kids that were brought here, not knowingly themselves breaking the law, but we've got to do something to, I think, give them legal status, no right to vote or citizenship or anything, and then you've still got this estimated 10 to 12 million of the DACA parents who came here knowing they came illegally. And, how do you deal with them? And the best solution that I've heard so far that we're putting into some legislation is you have them pay a $10,000 or $12,000 fine over a 5-year period to make restitution for breaking the law. And then that would give them legal status, no citizenship, no right to vote, and you also, if they're got a criminal record, you send them back, and if people don't want to pay the fine, you let them go back, and they can wait 4 years and apply to come back. But I've talked to some faith-based organizations and businesses, and a lot of people have run this idea by, and people seem to like it when they give it thought. And another part of that is if you take 10 million people times $10,000, that's $100 billion, which would build the wall 5 times over. So there's, people laughed when President Trump said that Mexico would pay for the wall. Well, if these aren't American citizens and they're paying this fine to and you take that money to build the wall, then essentially it's not Americans tax dollars that are paying to build it.
Yeah.
Plus, you get all these people registered and they're paying taxes, and it's I think there's a lot of win-wins on that.
Yeah, and also as far as Mexico paying for the wall, you also have the new trade agreement between Mexico, the United States, and Canada. Some people are saying that one of Trump's economic advisors said, hey, look, we just won the Super Bowl. Other people say, hey, look, if Congress approves this will be really good, and in a way, Mexico will pay for the wall in that way. Have you heard that? Do you agree with that? What do you think?
Oh yeah, that's one way you could look at it, and these agreements that they're coming up with on trade. I know there's some struggling, there's some pain getting there. There's some farmers that are seeing low soybean prices, and the issues with China, which I think will eventually be worked out. But if you look at the progress the administration's making, they got an agreement with the EU, they got an agreement with Mexico and Canada and Japan, and they're just going down the line, and eventually China will be in a position where they have no choice but to deal with it. And I was with the president a couple of weeks ago at a dinner, and he was talking about the China trade issue, and he said what people don't realize is they've already just about exhausted everything they can put tariffs on, and said we've still got another $200 or $300 billion worth of Chinese goods coming into our country we can put tariffs on. He said so they're basically out of negotiating room, and he makes a good point there that the trade imbalance with China and the United States is so much that they've got a whole lot more to lose than we do. But again, that's not a situation you want to be in for a long time. But at least we're in an economy that's growing at over 4% with super low unemployment and wages rising. So it's a good time to be negotiating and trying to get these trade deficits going in the right direction.
I appreciate your optimism on the China trade war essentially working itself out eventually, because they're out of negotiating room. What do we do with the intellectual property theft, though? I mean, $600 billion a year. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, and that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is that the Chinese have absolutely no problem, no moral problem or ethical problem with literally taking U.S. intellectual property and duplicating it and driving the U.S. inventors out of business. I mean, they'll take proven equipment and they'll take it apart and see how it's built and start building it in China and ship it here for a low price. I saw that back when I was doing engineering work, where they would take equipment that had been built in the U.S. and they would build it in China and put the same brand name on it and everything else and ship it over here like it was the American-made equipment, and sell it for a lower price. And then when it would break, send it back to the factory you thought it came from, and they'd say, "Well, we're sorry, but we didn't build it.
Wow,
a Chinese knockoff."
Yeah,
and that's they're doing that with electronics and everything else.
What about militarily? As far as China goes, the South China Sea. Have you seen the photos of these artificial islands and the runways and stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean, we get briefed on stuff that at the time we couldn't talk about it, but I think that's been made public. Obviously, it has if you're talking about it on the radio. So, yeah, the Chinese. And if you start looking around the world at all of the shipping lanes in the world, there's a Chinese presence literally on every shipping lane in the world. Both ends of the Panama Canal, or around the Horn of Africa. Everywhere that commerce moves, the Chinese are building some kind of a port, and they're putting a military presence in those areas. So they have this long range plan. They call it One Belt, One Road, where they want to obtain economic dominance, like they had a long time ago. And, whether it takes them 10 years or 500 years, they're kind of laying out this plan. I've seen over in Jordan and Israel and that area, the Dead Sea keeps going down to water being taken out of the Jordan River that flows into it. And so there's this big project to take water out of the Red Sea and desalinate it, produce fresh water, which is desperately needed in the area, and it'll get the concentration down to the same as the concentration in the Dead Sea, the mineral concentration. And since the Dead Sea is so far below sea level, they'll generate hydropower off of it. There's a pretty neat project they're talking about, and it'll help raise the level of the Dead Sea back up. But you get to looking around at that, and it's being funded and built by the Chinese. So they're all over the world doing these major projects, trying to flex their economic muscle. And they do that a lot of times, or not a lot of times, almost all the time, on really cheap labor and using their natural resources as leverage. So they'll do projects with basically no cost for the natural resources or the labor, which makes them the lowest game in town.
Wow!
And then they get these projects built and create jobs and stuff.
Well, so but they're in the World Trade Organization is a developing country. I don't know what other developing country can go to these other countries and do these massive projects.
Yeah, that
doesn't make any
true.
sense to me.
Yeah, it's when I've seen them, I was in a U.S. territory out there on Guam and the Northern Marianas, and they were building a huge casino on the island of Saipan. Several $billion-dollar casino on an island with 40 or 50,000 people on it.
Wow. We're talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman. We're about out of time. Last question, Bruce. What's the biggest obstacle that's still facing the Congress right now in your mind?
In my mind, it's and we actually made some improvement on it this summer, is getting to regular order and doing the appropriation bills and not having these huge omnibus bills and getting the spending under control. And I give President Trump a lot of credit for us getting this appropriation bill done before the fiscal year ran out to fund the military. Funded about, I think about 80 to 90% of all the cost of the federal government for next year, and that's because the President said back in March when that last one was passed, he said, I'm not signing another one, and I think that got the Senate's attention, and they actually did the work they were supposed to do and got an appropriation bill passed that we sent over.
Congressman Bruce Westerman, it's always great to have you on. Best of luck in your reelection, and we'll talk to you again soon, okay?
All righty, Paul. Have a good day.
All righty, you too, folks.